Okay, we are now recording. Welcome, my name is Lauren Woodman. I am an instructional designer in online learning and educational technology. Our training today is You Have the Power to Create Accessible PowerPoints. So first, let me tell you what we're going to discuss today. We'll start by discussing accessible templates and slide order. We'll also talk about text size, font, and color in your presentations. We'll talk about alternative text for visuals. We'll also talk about the accessibility checker. We'll review a video on dictation in Microsoft and talk about how that can be used to create your speaker notes and why you would want to use speaker notes. And then we will review the subtitle feature in PowerPoint. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And if you haven't gone to one of my presentations before, I am very laid back. And if you want to type in the chat or just unmute yourself and ask a question at any time, feel free to do so. You can interrupt me. I'm fine with that. I'll either answer it in the moment or I'll let you know if it's something that I'll address at the end. Okay, so one of the easiest ways to make sure that your PowerPoint presentation is accessible is to use an existing accessible template from PowerPoint. So if you open up PowerPoint, if you've ever noticed, it opens up to a page that allows you to choose a presentation or start a blank presentation. There's also a search box in the upper right-hand corner. Many of PowerPoint's presentation templates are already accessible, but if you want to be sure, in that search box, you can type in the word accessible and it will find an accessible template for you. This is one of them. Also, if you've been to any of my other presentations this month, it is also an existing accessible template. Now, part of that accessibility of the template is the reading order of items on the slide. And this is really important for individuals who are using a screen reader. So there is a selection pane, which you see on this right-hand side of the slide here. And that is what kind of orders all of the things on your slide. So just because your slide starts with a title here and pictures here, doesn't mean that that's the order that they would be read in. Typically, things go into this selection pane in the order that they're added. So you might add your pictures before you add your text. You might have added your text before you added your title. The screen reader doesn't know what order to read those things in unless you tell it to put it in the right order. Screen readers actually read from the bottom up in this selection pane. So that first item would be usually your title, then any content that you have, so your additional text on the slide, and then any images that you might want to add. So this will help an individual who's using a screen reader navigate through your PowerPoint presentation in the correct order. With fonts and colors in PowerPoint, there's a lot of creative options, right? There's all those fancy curly fonts. There's so many color options, and there's room to be very creative. But here are some things to keep in mind for optimal accessibility. You should use a simple sans serif font with adequate spacing between the letters. And those sans serif fonts basically means without feet. So you know that there are fonts like Times New Roman that have a little line at the bottom of them. Those can sometimes be difficult for screen readers to read. So a simple sans serif font like Calibri, Verdana, Arial is an optimal font. In PowerPoint, it should be at least 18-point font. And you should avoid using a fancy or italic or underline font. Underline fonts are typically hyperlinks. And so by using an underline font, it could be mistaken for a link. To keep your text easily readable, leave some space in your slides. So don't fill a whole slide with a lot of words. Ideally, limit the number of lines on each slide to 7 and limit the number of words in each line to 6. Leave plenty of space above and below each line. And if you're thinking, how can I portray all of the information I want to portray with those restrictions, well, you can try using your speaker notes. So instead of adding all of the content on a slide, use your speaker notes to provide more in-depth information. For colors, and you're thinking about your background, which is sometimes going to be an image, or it might just be a plain color, a bright white slide background can make text hard to read, and it can be fatiguing for the eyes. So if you're choosing a light background, try to go for an off-white or a cream. But text should be dark with lots of space around the letters if you're using a light background, but you could also use a dark background and white text. And to set the background color, you can go to the Design tab, Format Background, and choose the color. Your template may also have a color or a background image or something already set in it. Alt text. So alt text is important for describing images in a document for individuals using screen readers. So think about if you are looking at or trying to look at a presentation and there is an image there, if you're using a screen reader, you don't know what that image is. And typically a screen reader will just say image if no alternate text is entered. So to add alt text to a chart, a picture, a visual, a graphic, it actually works the same way across all of Microsoft. You can right click on whatever the image is that you want to add the alternate text to. And when you do that, it will bring up your menu items. You select Edit Alt Text. If the item's just decorative, maybe it's just a pretty picture of some flowers and it doesn't need any description, it's not important to what you're sharing, you can just mark it as decorative. If there is information, especially if it's a chart that needs some explanation, you can type in the information into the box that pops up. You might see it recommends 1 or 2 sentences. So if you have more than 1 or 2 sentences worth of information about an image, particularly a chart or a graph, it's best to put that information into the speaker notes and say, refer to those notes. You can use the accessibility checker to make sure that your content is accessible. Under the Review tab, you can click Check Accessibility and get a report of potential issues in your presentation, which includes missing alt text, any header rows or columns, and any tables you might have. If there are text contrast issues or color contrast issues with your background or your text, if you're missing slide titles, or if your slides are in the wrong order, or the reading order is not correct. So that's a great way if you're not sure if the things are accessible, you're not sure if things are in the right order, or if your text is hard to read, you can run that accessibility check at any point in time, and it will tell you exactly what needs to be fixed, why you should fix it, and what steps to take to fix it. I'm also going to show a short video on accessibility, the accessibility checker. Let me know if you can't hear or see it for some reason. That kind of demonstrates the accessibility checker in action. It's a great tool. I recommend it, and it is available across every Office product with the exception of Access. So even though we're talking about PowerPoint here, this is great for just making sure any of your documentations or anything that you're working on is accessible. So next we're going to talk about dictation. And we talked about this a little earlier. If any of you were at our session this morning, Sandy did a great job of telling us about this dictate option in PowerPoint, which can be used to dictate Word documents or even dictate out the text that you're going to write in an email. But where I find dictation can be really convenient, what I have been using it for, is to type out your speaker notes. So I'm going to take a moment and just say, why would you want speaker notes? So we mentioned earlier that it can be a great way to tell your viewer additional information about what's on a slide without having to put it all on that slide. It can also be a place for you to spell out additional information that doesn't fit in that alternate text box. But speaker notes can also be a transcript for your audience. So let's say you deliver a presentation and you want to send that out after the fact. You can have those speaker notes so that your audience or the viewer knows what it was that you talked about. And if that individual is deaf or hard of hearing, well, now they have a full transcript that goes along with each slide. I typically do this for my presentations because I have difficulty just remembering what I want to say. So I like to type out my notes. And sometimes those are very detailed word for word. And sometimes it might just be a brief summary of what I discussed. But if you're practicing your presentation, which I always recommend, you can use dictation while you're practicing reading out what's on your slide. And now you have that transcript already made for you. So you can kind of get around that without having to type out word for word. You can just speak it as you normally would, and now you have your notes. So you can find dictate in your home menu. There should be a little button that looks like a microphone. You just click the button and wait for it to turn on and start listening. You'll hear a little ping. You put your cursor where you want to start speaking, which would be in the speaker notes area, and just start speaking, and the text will appear. It does not by default have any punctuation, but you can say stop or add a period or next line if you want to add punctuation. I find that this is not as big of an issue in speaker notes as it might be if you're trying to type out like a book report or something. So this is available in the web version of PowerPoint and the Windows desktop version of PowerPoint 365. I actually have a Mac and I don't have that option in my Mac on the application, but I can do it on the web. And my Mac actually has a built-in dictation option as well that works the same way. I'm going to show a brief video that just shows the dictation in practice.
Hello.
Last year, we saw a 20% increase in sales. Now, most of this is attributed to...
The bear and her cubs hungrily searched the forest for berries. Awesome!
Okay, so that's dictation in practice. Now, the last thing I want to show you, I'm actually going to demonstrate before I tell you about, and that is subtitles. So I'm going to turn those on. And now I have my subtitles running. So you might see at the bottom of my screen, the presentation has compressed a little bit, and you should see subtitles along the bottom that go along with what I'm saying. And right now it appears to be fairly accurate. I am trying to enunciate and speak clearly. It is generally fairly accurate. It might get spelling of names wrong. For example, my name is Lauryn, and I know it will spell it with an E. But it is a fairly accurate way of providing captions. I don't believe that these are what we consider our 99% ADA compliant captions, but they are an option for just general accessibility in your presentations. So the first thing with thinking about subtitles and captions is to make sure that any outside content, if you're getting a video from YouTube or anywhere else, is captioned, and that you show those captions if there are captions. The next is if you decide to use subtitles in this way, it's very simple to turn on. Under slideshow, there's an option for subtitle settings, and you can select where you want those subtitles to appear. I have them appearing below the slide. You can also change the spoken language, and there are many different languages that you can speak. And it will also translate as well. So I could speak it in English and have the subtitle language be Spanish and have it translated that way for an audience if I don't speak the same language as the audience I'm delivering the presentation to. Again, with perhaps a few errors here and there. To turn on or off subtitles, as you see here, you can have the option to always have subtitles on. I do find sometimes some individuals might find it distracting, so I don't always have them on, but sometimes I will ask, would anybody like subtitles, or would anybody like me to turn the subtitles off if I already have them on? And you can turn them on very simply at the bottom left-hand corner of your PowerPoint presentation, where you might do your annotation. There is a button for subtitles. It's a square with just lines at the bottom, and you can click that to toggle on or off. Microsoft says for the best results with subtitles that you should speak as clearly as possible and loud as possible, eliminate any background noise. I think they also say to use a headphone, an external microphone, use a headset or other recommended microphone, and to have a stable internet connection, because this is a web-based service. So it does require you to have a stable internet connection. And again, this is available whether you're using the application on your computer or the web version. And I will also say there is a present live option with PowerPoint online that Sandy and I did a presentation on in the fall. And that live presentation option allows individuals to follow along with your presentation on their phone, and the subtitles will appear for them on their phone as well. It's a live transcript. So there are those multiple options. So even if someone isn't viewing your presentation on a computer, but is viewing it on their phone in real time, they will see that transcript. So I think that's a great accessibility option. And that is all I have on the things I wanted to show you. Here are some resources. These are links to mostly to Microsoft's products. They have great articles with videos and tutorials of how to use these different accessibility features, and many, many more. There are a lot of built-in accessibility features to Microsoft, not just PowerPoint, all of their products. So I suggest you check out these resources. I'll put a link to this presentation in the chat so that you have all of these links. And at this point, I can take any questions. If there's anything you want to see more in depth, I'm happy to do that as well.
Thanks, Lauryn. This is great. I continue to learn so many new things about PowerPoint now that I'm playing with it a lot. In terms of the accessibility piece, the accessibility checker, will that work for recorded PowerPoint sessions? Because I'm doing recordings, I'm not doing live.
Yeah, so you actually do the accessibility checker when you are making your PowerPoint.
Okay.
So yeah, that's something that you can do. You can do it throughout the process. You can do it at the very end. So you would run that accessibility check beforehand. And I see what you're saying. Some of these things, your recorded PowerPoint is probably going to be a video.
Yes.
Which kind of makes some of this moot, you know, as far as slide order. The color contrast is still important. It would still matter for that. But with video, then you're talking about, is it captioned? You know, is there kind of a transcript that tells you what's happening?
Yeah. So what I've been doing with Joe's help is recording the PowerPoint and then transferring it over to Echo. And then I do my closed captioning there.
Yeah. So a little bit different. I would still recommend running it because in the event that somebody does want the presentation or somebody says, I can't really see, it would be easier to see that, then at least you can give them the presentation.
Yeah, I do the transcript as well. And they have as a resource the notes with the slides at the top. So
perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how I record it. I prepare the notes, and that's my speech for that slide. So
yeah, perfect.
This is really helpful. And I am so glad to hear, I can't imagine how upset I get when I see things on PowerPoint slides that are crammed with stuff. You've got to, everything you're saying, you're putting up on the slide. And the ones that just fill up the slide so that it's not comfortable for the eyes. And when then it becomes distracting and you're not absorbing what you're supposed to be hearing or seeing.
And I always tell people, don't be afraid to have more slides. You can have more slides with less information. You can have 3 or 4 slides about the same thing if you need to break it up into manageable chunks for your audience.
Right. Yep. And I'm glad my favorite font types are acceptable. I always like the much cleaner. I always hated Times New Roman. Even when I have a book, I can't stand it, but like the Calibrian is my favorite.
Yeah. It is interesting though, some of the, like here's an example, some of the colors. So this is like a built-in color format. And the default text in here was white. If you notice, you might not have even noticed this one's black, the rest are white, because the white text on here popped up as an accessibility issue that there wasn't enough contrast.
I could see that. Yep.
Yeah.
Wow. And you know what, if I could add something, a few years ago, probably just before you came, Lauryn, or maybe around the same time, the font in Blackboard was Times New Roman. And then we, asked to have it changed to Arial. That I think that's the default now. But yeah, and the color, we've always had, some issues with the color. I still don't think the black in Blackboard is still the darkest black. I don't know.
Not
Maybe
black.
it's just my.
It's
not
Blackboard
black. We were you here when we went round and round with Blackboard about it too? It is not the black that we should have. Black.
Not a true black.
No, true black. If that's
This is great. I love all these tips and tricks.
Thanks. Let me, Karen, did you have any questions that relate to the presentation?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. I just wanted to ask because I'm going to stop sharing so that I can grab that link for you all and put that in the chat. And I just got a notice from Microsoft that says, thanks for using subtitles. If you want to be more inclusive and save time, you can turn on always use subtitles.
Oh, wow.
Sure. All right, share. Okay. Let's hope this link works for you. I just put a link to the presentation into the chat. Let me know if that link works. If not, I can try to resend it. We've had some issues with the links working for some people and not everyone.
Perfect.
Hey,
Went right to it.
Great.
Let me try again.
It didn't work for you, Karen?
There it is. I guess
Okay.
I clicked it too quickly.
Okay, so at this point, I'm going to stop the recording, but I can hang around for a bit if anyone has questions about this or about anything else related to accessibility or anything. I'm free to chat.